Studio. Where? Dave. Is the studio where we're ready to
Should
start?
be, yeah.
Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 17th, 2025 zoning meeting. We will start our meeting with introductions, and we will start with the city clerk.
Billy Tons, Deputy City Clerk.
Good evening, Dimple Ajmera at large.
Good evening, Marjorie Molina. I represent District 5.
Good evening, Renee Johnson, and I'm honored to represent District 4.
Good evening, Allison Craig, Assistant City Manager.
Good evening, Dante Anderson, Mayor Pro Tem, District 1.
Malcolm Graham, District 2.
Ed Driggs, District 7.
Tarver Carter, 6.
Lawana Mayfield, Councilmember at Large.
Terry Hagler-Gray, Senior Assistant City Attorney.
Excellent. So we begin our meeting with an invocation as an expression and inspiration, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation by a council member is intended to underscore our proceedings, and we celebrate the religious diversity of our community, including those without a religious faith. And this evening is my turn to provide the invocation. And so I'd like to share some thoughts with us all. You know, I've been in the community and speaking to a lot of residents and a lot of my friends throughout the country, and there's a sense of unsettlingness, and I feel that there's a lot of intensity these days that a lot of our residents are dealing with, in addition to everything that's going on in the city and their lives. And during these times when there's high anxiety, I firmly believe that it is a moment for all of us to just take a moment to ground ourselves in our faith and what we believe our personal inner constitution is, and why we are here and what we do. And so I hope that all of us are taking that moment to exhale and be connected to the Creator or whatever divine figure you believe in, whatever religious faith you have. But take a moment to exhale and be connected to what grounds you and what you know will help see you through not only these days, but days to come and days that are behind us. And that's my prayer for all of us as we begin this evening. Thank you. If you are able to stand, please join us with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. So I'm just going to provide an explanation of our zoning process, and we'll get started. The process begins with applications submitted to our planning staff for review, and cases come in two types that are on our agenda tonight. We have decisions, and we also have hearings. Decisions are on cases for which a public hearing was previously held, and therefore there's no public comment this evening on those cases. And then the hearings for anyone wishing to speak for a particular petition that has a hearing this evening, we ask that you see the clerk before the start of that particular hearing. Staff will have a presentation, and there is no time limit for the presentation for staff. And the petitioner for the hearing, for those who are in favor, they will receive 6 minutes combined to present their case, unless there are two things that occur. One is there are opponents that are signed up to speak against that particular petition, or if staff is in opposition of the petition, the petitioner will get 10 minutes, the opponent will get 10 minutes combined, and then the petitioner will have a 2-minute rebuttal. If no one is opposed or no one is signed to speak against that particular petition, then staff proceeds with the short presentation and the public hearing is closed, and we move on to the next public hearing. The petitions go to our Zoning Committee of Planning Commission for review prior to this evening and for recommendation. And I'm going to pass it over to the chair, Mr. Blumenthal, so he can introduce that particular committee. Thank you, Mr. Blumenthal.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you to council. My name is Andrew Blumenthal. It's my pleasure to serve as the chairman of the Zoning Committee of the Planning Commission. First, to introduce my fellow commission members here this evening, we have Rick Winokur, Aaron Shaw, and Shauna Neely, as well as a few tuning in virtually as well. The Zoning Committee will next meet on Tuesday, March 4th at 5:30 p.m. At that meeting, the Zoning Committee will discuss and make recommendations on the petitions that have public hearings this evening. The public is welcome to attend that meeting. However, please note that it is not a continuation of any of the public hearings that are being held here tonight. Prior to that meeting, you are welcome to contact us to provide input. You can find contact information and information on each petition on the city's website at charlotteplanning.org. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so we have a number of withdrawn for this evening, and I would allow Mr. Pettin to walk us through those, and then we'll need a motion, all in one motion, to either approve or deny the deferral. Thank you, Mr. Pettin.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just to note, we did have an additional item from earlier this afternoon. So we have item number 12, which is 2024-130 by Abacus Acquisitions, LLC. And then we have item 13, 2024-116 by Fevin Nagesh. Both of those decisions deferring to March 17th. Then for our hearings, we have item number 16, 2024-073 by CLT Operations Holdings, LLC. Item 17, 2024-112 by Dream Key Partners. Item 18, 2024-124 by Aviation Metals of North Carolina. And then item 19, 2024-137 by Wilkes Asset Management. And then item 20, which is 2024-138 by Peak Development. Those are our hearings requesting deferral, all to March 17th, with the exception of item 17, which is by Dream Key Partners. They're requesting a deferral till June 16th. And before I conclude, I just want to withdraw the deferral request, for item 12, 2024-130. That was my mistake. Jumped the gun a little bit on that one. So that would just leave us item 13 out of our decisions to be deferred, which is 2024-116. So again, item number 12 will remain as listed on the agenda in our consent agenda. So happy to answer any questions. Sorry for the last second confusion there.
Thank you, Mr. Pettin. So to be clear, we have items number 13, number 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 that will be deferred for from this evening.
That is
and
correct,
12
yes.
will remain on the agenda.
Yep.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve that deferment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any comment? All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. So we will move on to the consent agenda items, and rezoning petition items 3 through 12 may be considered in one motion except for those pulled by a particular council member. Please note that these petitions meet the following criteria. There was no public opposition at the hearing. Staff recommends approval. The zoning committee recommends approval, and there were no changes after the zoning committee's recommendation. Are there any consent agenda items council would like to pull or question for a separate vote? Okay, we'll come around. We have Ms. Molina.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd like to pull item 4 and item 9 for comment.
Okay, item 4 and item 9, Ms. Johnson.
Item number 5, please, for comments.
Item number 5, and Ms. Mayfield, I believe I saw your hand.
Yes, item 6 and item 10 for separate vote.
Okay. 6 and 10. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the following petitions and to adopt the zoning committee's statement of consistency for each of these petitions as they appear in our agenda, and I will read them just now. Just for clarity, the items that are pulled for a separate comment, do you want a separate vote as well, or just comment? Ms. Molina and Ms. Johnson.
I mean, since we're pulling in for comment, we can do a separate vote, but yeah,
Okay.
I just want to make a comment.
Okay, so item number 3, petition number 2024-014. Item number 7, petition number 2024-111. Item number 8, petition number 2024-117. Item number 11, 2024-128. And item number 12, 2024-130. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, please raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous, so we will start with item number 4. Is there a motion to approve and adopt the zoning committee statement of consistency for petition number 2024-099 by
So
Mecklenburg County?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comment?
Yes.
Ms. Molina?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and I want to lift up this particular petition because it's actually from our partners at Mecklenburg County. This petition is actually 24.75 acres that's planned for a community resource center in the heart of the east side. And so initially, when I was gathering information about what it would be, I spoke to Chairman of the County Commission who represents the east side, Commissioner Mark Jarrell, and he actually brought staff, and he was talking about some of the amenities and some of the new-aged services that they intend to deliver to the east side that are very exciting. And I think for the first time, based on what I was told by the staff at the county, as well as our chairman, that there would even be dentistry available in this particular facility, which was extremely exciting for me. I mean, it would be great for the residents that are in East Charlotte, as well as, serving our entire county and those who choose to come to the east side and take part in those resources. So my comment is really just to lift up this, to thank Mecklenburg County for their partnership and their implementation on the east side, because this type of implementation is really what we need for our residents. I'm proud of my partner, Chairman Jarrell, because he's really forward-thinking. And so I just wanted to make sure I lift that up and, give the residents of the east, the east side and our county something to get really excited about for what's coming as a resource to our city by way of, the county and what they intend to do. So, again, this has gone through all the processes. I'm really excited, and I, thank you guys for your support.
Thank you, Ms. Molina. I remember your comments at the hearing, and I, too, underscore the support for the east side, as you just so eloquently stated. Any additional comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Is there a motion to approve item number 5, petition number 2024-103 by Rocky Road Partners, LLC?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. There is a motion and a second. Any comment? Ms. Johnson?
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to lift up this petition, and I don't know if Matt from Landworks is here. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I wanted to thank you. It's been a pleasure working with him. He reached out to me very early, and I referred him to the Seven Oaks community. And we didn't have any opposition. And I reached out to the Seven Oaks HOA today, president today, and he said that they were excited about this petition. So that's a lot of progress from the last time there was a development in this area. And I just want to thank the developer for the strategic and approach and the engagement with the community. Thank you for that. There's quite a few benefits. There's going to be road widening on Rocky River Road, sidewalk improvements. The site contains new multi-use path, approximately 500 feet of off-site sidewalk extensions. So this is just one of those strategic and balanced development that I'm excited to support today. So I'm looking forward to supporting it.
Excellent. Any additional comments? All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Is there a motion to approve item number 6, petition number 2024-105 by Angelo Tillman?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any comment?
I did have a quick question, and forgive me for not asking this ahead of time, but I just wanted a very clear and concise why B to F in particular. Why did it have to step up all the way to F?
I couldn't quite hear the last part of I'm sorry.
I'm just asking, it went from a B designation to F, and
Okay.
I was just curious as to why it made such a large leap. I say large, relatively.
N1B to N1F.
Mr. Pettin, can you address that question?
I'm not sure, the intersection?
N1B to
Right.
N1F.
Oh.
This is a petition
Sorry,
104.
You said B to F, I thought you were talking about like a grade for the road itself, sorry.
No.
There were limitations, I think the size of the lot and the configuration of it being kind of long and narrow. B just wouldn't really provide somewhat of the yield that they got out of this, and F gave them an opportunity to kind of concentrate the development on the front side and keep everything else open space, because it's really just a skinny lot, and you couldn't really get too much with B, so they went to F, which is a conditional district typically, but it's limited to just 2 principal buildings on the lot, which can have 4 to 5 units, so they took advantage of that opportunity and then kept everything else undeveloped and open space, which we thought was a good outcome, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additional comment? I will state that I spoke with the Hidden Valley Neighborhood Association about this particular petition, and they had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Tillman, and they are not in opposition. They support what Mr. Tillman is doing, so the community is behind it. All in favor, please raise hands. Any opposed? Okay, Ms. Mayfield is opposed. All right, is there a motion to approve and adopt the committee statement of consistency for item number 9, petition number 2024-122 by Mitworth Commons Holding LLC?
So moved.
Second.
All right, is there a comment?
Yes.
Ms. Molina?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and I'll be brief on this one. Actually, what I found in our process, we understand it, but very often our community members don't really understand how our process works. A lot of the times, by the time the community member really understands, we may even be at this position where we're ready to decision something. And so I got an email from a community member who wanted to know what was actually taking place at this particular location. And so based on the type of petition, the actual uses are not stated, but it is consistent what they can do with the 2040 policy map. And I wanted to be clear in stating out loud that the 2040 comp plan goal alignment per staff, the petition could facilitate a 10-minute neighborhood or aid a diverse and resilient economic opportunity. So it's likely going to be something related to that. It's actually been, there was no public opposition as, previously stated by the Mayor Pro Tem. It's been approved by our zoning committee. There's been no additional issues, and it's consistent with the policy map, so it's nearly by right. So I wanted to make sure that I took an opportunity to say that out loud for any of our community members that is concerned about item number 9 on the agenda, and what the possible uses were for that, and why I, for those reasons, am supporting this particular position or petition tonight that's on the agenda. So I encourage anybody with any specific questions to reach out to me to make sure that I can guide you through the process as this, continues to develop. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comment? All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. All right, is there a motion to approve and adopt item number 10, petition number 2024-123 by QCRE Investments LLC?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Someone requested this? All right, hearing none.
You did what?
I requested it for separate vote.
Okay. Okay, hearing none, all in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? All right, Ms. Mayfield is in opposition. And I believe that takes us through our consent, and we can move on to our non-consent agenda items. There. And item number 13 was deferred to next month, so we will begin with item 14. Is there a motion to approve and adopt agenda item number 14, petition number 2024-121?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion
David
and a
has to actually
second.
present.
We had some changes after for these next
Okay.
two items.
Yep, you're
Just-
right.
yep.
And I do have that marker, so yes, let's talk about the changes first.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. So we did have some changes. This is our text amendment that has been in process. We had the hearing back in November, deferred it in December after the passage of Senate Bill 382, had to go back over the last couple months and make some tweaks and adjustments based on the provisions that came out of that Senate bill. And as you can see in front of you, there were quite a few sections that were modified to be compliant and get some things that we needed to clean up to be compliant with Senate Bill 382. Again, that was approved back on December 11th of 2024. So you can see sections 2.3, 7.3, 9.3, 10.3, 11.3, 12, 13, on and on, that we've got several items that had to get cleaned up and modified a little bit to again, be compliant with that Senate bill that passed back in December. We also had a couple of items that were non-related to Senate Bill 382, which was Section 15.4 EE, 15.4 GG, and 15.4 JJ dwellings, duplex, quadruplex, and triplex. Those are just some minor administrative adjustments, nothing that affects where they're allowed to be located in the city, any other those types of scenarios that we really would get into in that sense. So all these changes were made after zoning committee because, again, we were kind of pushed into those by that Senate bill passage. So we don't recommend they go back because, frankly, there's not much we can change about having to modify those provisions and sections that we outlined. So with that, I'll be happy to answer questions that you may have on these changes and on the text amendment in general.
Move not to send back.
Second.
All right, there's a motion not to send back in second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Is there a motion to approve and adopt?
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Driggs.
So I did want to talk about this a little bit because we've had a couple of conversations about text amendments in the past. I just want to mention these text amendments were presented to the Transportation Planning and Development Committee and discussed at much greater length. And I think the members of the committee, at least a majority of us, concluded that the changes were not material. And I say that because I think one of our concerns is as we do these tweaks and language changes and updates and things, we want to make sure we're staying on course and that we haven't undermined the basic purpose. We knew that it was a living document, as Mr. Graham likes to point out, and therefore there was going to be this kind of ongoing maintenance. So generally speaking, I think we were satisfied that these are within the scope of technical or operating refinements to the basic thing. The presentation was in two parts, as we just heard, and a lot of discussion was around 382, Senate Bill 382, which included a provision about downzoning and impose some limits on local constituencies' ability to make text amendments or adopt any policy that had the effect of downzoning a district without the consent of the owner. And that has been the subject of some controversy in the General Assembly. There is, in fact, right now a bill pending that might have the effect of reversing that. So we're kind of waiting to see what the outcome is of the discussion in the legislature before kind of fully committing. And what we have right now in the current text amendment is language that has had anything that might be offensive to 382 taken out, but in such a way that it could be put back if it turns out that the legislature takes a different position on it. So essentially what we're doing right now is a couple of more technical and minor changes, and we are passing language that is consistent for now with 382. And I guess that's the way I'll put it. There wasn't a vote in committee because it's not actually a committee referral to the council. So it's coming from the Planning Commission. I recommend that we move ahead with these amendments. I will point out, too, we got a fairly detailed discussion of the actual language from Ms. Holmes on Valentine's Day on Friday. And so that you have a chance, if you're concerned about details of language, to look at that and see a lot of specific information. My personal recommendation is that these are things that we need to do in the ordinary course of business or as a result of 382, and they leave open for us the possibility of taking up some of the things we wanted to do that we can't because of 382 in the event that the legislature takes a different position on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drakes. Any additional comment? Hearing none, all in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? All right, that is unanimous. We will move on to item 15, and Mr. Pettin, I believe there are changes as well for 15.
Yes, so this petition did make some changes after zoning committee, mainly to clarify some efforts to accommodate a connection for future McIntyre Creek tributary Greenway with Mecklenburg County Park and Rec. They clarified some notes referring to the Piedmont natural gas easement, and that they would coordinate with Mecklenburg County Park and Rec in order to dedicate and convey that area for the future Greenway connection through the site prior to the first building certificate of occupancy. That area could overlap with the gas easement and some possible tree save area. And then for portions of that Greenway that are outside the PNG easement and the tree save areas, a minimum 10-foot wide sidewalk connection would be provided as generally depicted on the plan. There's also a provision that states that if they're unable to get approval to work in that easement, they can continue to coordinate with Park and Rec on an alternative connection, which would be through the construction of a sidewalk through the remainder of the site, and that also would have to happen prior to the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy for the, first building certificate of occupancy for the site. So that's the change that was made. It was somewhat just clarifying. We did discuss some of this with zoning committee. The notes just got a little bit more clear detail on it. So again, we don't feel that that would change some of that outcome. It is minor and would not warrant additional review by zoning committee. So we'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you. Is there a motion not to send back to the zoning committee?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Is there a motion to approve and adopt agenda item 15 as stated in our agenda?
Move and adopt.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all raise hands in favor. Any opposed? That is unanimous. All right, so we will now move on to the hearing portion of the evening, and we will begin with agenda item number 21, petition number 2024-125 by Tay Holdings LLC. The location is approximately 8.47 acres located on the west side of Sonoma Valley Drive, east of Stony Ridge Drive, and north of Mount Holly Road in District 2, Mr. Graham's district. The current zoning is MX2, INNOV, and NS. Proposed zoning is into ACD. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to the environment, site and building plan. And after staff's presentation, Mr. Gross, you will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. This site is 8.5 acres located north of Mount Holly Road, west of I-45, in an area where the existing uses are predominantly single-family, but there is some multifamily zoning as well as ongoing multifamily development occurring directly west and south of the site. The site is currently zoned mixed-use innovative. This very small section of the site along the site's southern boundary zone neighborhood services. Current zoning is a result of a 2003 plan which permitted 40 townhome units. This request is for the neighborhood 2A zoning district with the conditional plan. The proposal itself, that is consistent with the Paul Smat's recommendation for neighborhood 2 at this site. The proposal itself would allow for up to 39 attached units with a maximum building height of 48 feet. A 10-foot Class C buffer would be provided where the site is adjacent to the neighborhood 1 place type. 40-foot setback would be provided where the site is adjacent to the neighborhood 1 place type. Buildings would be limited to no more than 6 units each. HVAC and solid waste areas. The petitioner shall construct a four-floor concrete median on Sonoma Valley Drive, limiting access to right in, right out. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to environment, site, and building design. Proposal is consistent with the policy notes recommendation for neighborhood 2 place type at this site and maintains entitlements for the same residential product that was already entitled for this area under the approved existing zoning district. The site is abutting other neighborhood 2 place type properties and would help promote a variety of housing types as the existing and developing residential options surrounding the site are single-family detached and multifamily stacked. Site is serviced by transit options, which would connect future residents to the Calabridge Commons River Bend shopping centers, as well as the Rosa Parks Community Transportation Center. And I'll take questions following petitioner's comments.
Thank you. Mr. Gross?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council and the Zoning Committee. Nolan Gross with Urban Design Partners, representing Tay Holdings LLC on rezoning petition 2024-125. So our site as it exists today off Sonoma Valley Drive. There's an 8.5 acre site. Again, part of the original Cedar Mill Master Development Community. Additional aerial imagery showing it as a wooded vacant site. Next door, you can see the recent development of a multifamily stacked apartment complex. As Holly mentioned, the site is split zoned NS and MX2 from that original 2003 entitlement. That original entitlement makes up parcel area D on this rezoning petition, 2003-88, which was originally entitled for up to 40 multifamily attached townhome dwelling units. After a lot swap amongst developable areas, it currently is entitled for 31 units by right today. The site is identified as neighborhood 2. Jumping ahead to our rendered site plan, proposing up to 39 multifamily attached townhome dwelling units. These would be rear-loaded units off of a residential alley, all having a minimum 20-foot driveway and 2-car garage. We have committed to landscaping along the residential alley, as well as increased buffers, as Holly mentioned. One update, last week in coordination with CDOT, we will no longer be providing the concrete median. We'll be striping for a left turn lane so that vehicular traffic can make a left turn into the site. That was actually a request and concern of the existing Cedar Mill community. They were concerned about traffic utilizing the roundabout to come around, turn around, and then make a right into the site. So we will be revising our site plan following this meeting. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any comment? Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you. Question for staff. We have in here in the transportation summary that the site is located adjacent to Sonoma Valley, mainly that a traffic impact study is not required. I am trying to understand what really is our trigger. My colleague, Councilmember Johnson, has mentioned a number of times regarding the traffic impact study. The reason I'm asking is because Mount Holly Road is a 2-lane road. It is right off of 485. So you have a development that just opened, as well as a fast food restaurant, as well as a gas station. What is currently happening is that individuals, whether they're coming up Mount Holly Road, heading towards Mount Holly Huntersville Road, or they're coming off of 485, they're using that current turn lane to then try to get back over to the straight lane. We already have a multifamily complex that has just opened. Across the street, across the railroad tracks, is another multifamily that is coming in. There is no traffic light right there. The traffic light is not until you get past Cedar Mill, where you're entering 485. There's also another proposed multifamily unit that is further up Mount Holly. So exactly when do we take into effect the accumulation of all of these multifamily and the impact that it is having on our road infrastructure?
Yeah, I'll let CDOT, Jay Carpenter with CDOT, speak to how they assess traffic impact analysis.
Good evening, Jay Carpenter with CDOT. So a couple responses to that from a traffic study perspective. For N2 zoning, approximately 1,500 daily trips or 150 peak hour trips would trigger a traffic study. This development falls around 250 daily trips. So they don't have any requirements per our ordinance to complete a traffic study. However, I will, to the rest of your points, there is a traffic study being installed at the Sonoma Valley intersection. It's been in design with the railroad for over a year now and is going into construction soon and will be installed by approximately the end of 2025.
So we do have a light that's
Yes.
going to be installed along with the left turn that you mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Hearing,
Close.
Second.
all right, motion to close and second. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. We'll move on to agenda item number 22, petition number 2024-126 by Greystar Development East LLC. The location is approximately 11.53 acres, located on the north side of Queen City Drive, the south side of Tuckasegee Road, and the east of Sheets Creek in District 3. Ms. Brown's district. The current zoning is MUD ANDO and N2B ANDO, as well as N1A ANDO. The proposed zoning is N2C CD ANDO. Staff recommends this petition, and after staff's presentation, Mr. Carmichael will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. This site is 11.5 acres along the north side of Queen City Drive, south side of Tuckasegee, just north of the airport. This is an area with single-family residential neighborhoods, nodes of multifamily developments, and commercial and industrial areas concentrated at major intersections, accessible just off the interstate. Majority of the site is currently zoned mixed-use development district optional, with smaller portions of the site zoned neighborhood 2B and neighborhood 1A along the Tuckasegee Road frontage. This whole area is under the airport noise disclosure overlay, so all the existing as well as the proposed zoning districts would also carry that overlay with it. The request is to go to the neighborhood 2C zoning district with a conditional plan. This proposal is inconsistent with the policy map's recommendation for the neighborhood 1 place type at this property. This proposal is for up to 306 multifamily stacked dwelling units and up to 10,000 square feet of leasing office amenity building space. Access to the site is via Tuckasegee Road, and there is a conditional note specifying that in the event that access to the site through Grand Lakes Drive on the adjacent parcel to the east cannot be achieved prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy of the 155th multifamily unit, the petitioner will create private driveway access point onto Queen City Drive. Class B landscape yards or opaque fences shall be installed adjacent to the single-family homes along the northern and western boundaries. 8-foot sidewalks and planting strips will be installed along all existing new and public streets. 5,000 square feet of amenitized open space will be provided. There are architectural standards related to prohibited building materials, as well as a max building height of 48 feet. Staff recommends approval of this petition. The site may serve as a transition between the existing single-family residential neighborhoods along Tuckasegee and the commercial areas along Queen City Drive. Site is located within a quarter mile to bus stops, a mile away from middle and high schools, within a half mile of commercial spaces along Queen City Drive that may provide goods and services to residents in this area, and where the site abuts single-family uses along its western and northern boundaries that would buffer its development with landscape yards as well as environmental features. The entitled development along the site's eastern boundary would contain compatible uses, including general businesses as well as hotel room uses. And I'll take questions following petitioner's comments.
Thank you. Mr. Carmichael?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council and the Zoning Committee. I'm John Carmichael, and I'm representing the petitioner. With me tonight are Josh Glover and Mike Sullivan of the petitioner and Thomas Apapuro of Design Resource Group. As Holly said, the site contains just over 11.5 acres. It's located on the south side of Tuckasegee Road, north side of Queen City Drive, just east of the intersection of Sheet Circle and Tuckasegee Road. This is an aerial photo of the site. An approximately 9-acre portion of the site is currently zoned Mud-O, and the remaining portion of the site is zoned a combination of N2B and N1A. Under the approved conditional rezoning plan for the Mud-O portion of the site, a maximum 225-room hotel with a maximum height of 75 feet can be constructed on the 9-acre portion of the site. Petitioners requesting the rezoning of the site to the N2C CD zoning district to accommodate the development of a residential community on the site that would contain up to 306 non-income restricted attainable multifamily stacked dwelling units. This is the rezoning plan. The petitioner would construct a westbound left turn lane into the site on Tuckasegee Road. A minimum 8-foot wide planting strip and a minimum 8-foot wide sidewalk will be installed on the site's frontages on Queen City Drive and Tuckasegee Road. The internal public streets would have 8-foot wide planting strips and 8-foot wide sidewalks as well. A 30-foot wide Charlotte water easement is located along the large majority of the western boundary of the site. Additionally, there'd be a 25-foot wide Type B landscape yard with a 6-foot tall opaque fence established along the western boundary of the site. A minimum 6-foot tall berm with a 6-foot tall opaque wooden fence would be established along this portion of the western boundary line of the site, essentially a portion of the western edge of the public street from Tuckasegee Road. The maximum building height would be 48 feet. Architectural standards are a part of the petitioner's rezoning plan. We appreciate the planning staff's recommendation of approval. There are no outstanding issues, and we're happy to answer your questions. And once again, we appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you. Question for staff. Explain to me what exactly is neighborhood 2C conditional airport noise disclosure overlay? What does that mean?
The Neighborhood 2C district is one of the 3 Neighborhood 2C multifamily districts. So there's Neighborhood 2A, Neighborhood 2B, and Neighborhood 2C. The airport noise disclosure overlay is over this parcel as well as most of the parcels in the area, just saying that it's within the overlay that there's airport noise in the area. So, and the Neighborhood 2C district allows for multifamily uses of this nature. It's really predominantly used for multifamily stacked.
Residents and community members reach out regarding the environmental impact. So I'm also trying to understand the support of planning staff for a project that we already know is in the airport noise overlay, but it's also extremely close to the highway and the environmental impacts of both noise as well as gas, fumes, and other things that will be coming from the highway where traffic is going 24 hours. So help me understand why this would be encouraged when we're at the same time trying to support our CAP program to ensure we have better air quality.
So in terms of the noise overlays, so and this image shows that it's, and I wish it could be zoomed out further. It's a very large area that the airport noise disclosure overlay is over. So everything in Hatch, everything within this map, as well as a much larger area, is within this overlay. And in terms of supporting just residential, are you asking as to why staff would support residential?
Pretty much,
Okay.
because it seems like if it's in an airport noise overlay, and the airport has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars out in the Steel Creek area. Some of that land is now manufacturing and logistics because of the impact of airport noise and other things. So why would we think that this, when it's such a large swath of land, would be a good idea for residential housing?
So being within the airport noise disclosure overlay doesn't preclude housing or that it should be exempt from being considered for a housing option. It's just that it should be within a disclosure, and it's just that it should be noticed to future residents. In terms of considering this for N2C in general, we looked at this area and it was identified as a need for housing in terms of our equitable growth framework when we talked to the folks in our long-range planning section as being an area where there is an intense need for a variety of housing and diverse housing options. So having multifamily in this area does at least speak to that need, and the airport noise disclosure overlay doesn't preclude a need for residential product types. I'm not sure if that.
Not really.
Okay.
So we've had conversations with CAP regarding this project, with our CAP team. The answer is yes or no. Have we not? So let me rephrase the question, my apologies. When there's a conversation regarding a project that potentially would go into an airport noise overlay, because there are challenges, as well as the proximity to the highway, because there are challenges, do we bring in our CAP team to help with the discussion at any point?
We're not talking specific, so these are all considerations. When we look at something within the airport noise disclosure overlay, it's not as if it's being ignored, no. But are we talking specifically to the folks within a CAP team? No. But this isn't being ignored per se. We are considering everything within the airport noise disclosure overlay is being considered within this request, but we did not feel that it was something that should be considered against the proposal itself. We still believe that the N2C request and what was being proposed at this site was appropriate given its location and given what we're seeing in this area and the need for housing in this area, especially as identified with the equitable growth framework.
So the final question that I have, just for clarification for me. I think it would be helpful, and it probably is a conversation for something to be referred to committee, for us to have deeper conversation regarding what is our CAP expectation for the growth of the city, because I don't want to give the impression that as long as you say, well, it's housing, it can go anywhere, when we are already having multiple calls from community that are impacted negatively regarding environmental controls and environmental constraints. Seem like this will be a perfect area for some industrial or light industrial or manufacturing versus housing when we know there's going to be a change. We say that it's a disclosure overlay. Okay, as an apartment renter, when I go in and apply for that apartment, depending on what time of day that I go, it might not be at the height of when the planes are going by, but they're not going to disclose to me that, oh, by the way, this apartment complex is built in the airport overlay, so there's a good chance. And we also do not have language necessarily to say, construction-wise, you need to have 3M or 5M insulation in to ensure that when you're inside your apartment, you're not impacted, and or you don't smell the gas from the highway and other things. We don't go into that much detail. So to have an overlay, but it not be disclosed to the potential renters that can come anywhere within the next year to 5 years or more, it seems a bit of a challenge for me, but thank you for explaining it.
And I will just say, and I understand, much of the airport noise disclosure overlay, much of those properties, especially as you get closer to the airport, are reserved for industrial zoning, especially when you're closer to the airport. This is on really the northern periphery of the airport noise disclosure overlay. So south of I-85 here, and you can see on the edge of the map here, that purple, that's industrial. As you go south and further south, it gets industrial. But here on the northern edge of the periphery, you're seeing more residential, and that's really on the edge of the airport noise disclosure overlay. I don't know if that helps at all, but that's just the context of where it is within the overlay itself.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Driggs?
So I appreciate the questions, but I have to point out, we don't have a policy about this. You can't just take a zoning case and say, hey, what about this? If you want to do that, which is a perfectly reasonable suggestion, you have to then formulate what our standards would be. The CAP doesn't address it. The CAP is about greenhouse gases. It's about our buildings and LEED certification. We have a new version of CAP coming out. But I don't know if we said, oh, we're not happy about this one because of where it is and because of the noise and the proximity, what test are we applying? We have to have a requirement that is not being met and not just invent one on a case-to-case basis. So I'm very
That's
open.
a great point, which is why I said it probably needs to go to committee
and I'm
for
picking up on
discussion.
that, and I'm telling you
And
that.
because
but-
it's a hearing tonight,
Okay.
and the first time that it's being presented is tonight.
Ms.
So a lot
Mayfield,
of times, the
can Mr.
project,
Driggs have the floor, and we can come back to you, but he was in the middle of his statement. Let's let him
responding
finish.
to my questions, yes.
Still, let's take turns. So my point is, again, if it is the wish of the council to make a referral about whether or not our zoning decisions should be informed by environmental concerns on a location-by-location basis, I can just tell you that that's not two sentences, right? I mean, then you have to get deep into the circumstances and the limits that you're going to establish and how that works. But as it stands right now, we don't have that policy, so I accept the suggestion of a referral, and I'm just saying that would imply that we get a majority to agree that that is something that should be taken up by the committee.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Did you have a rebuttal?
Well, it's not a rebuttal, but I appreciate that. I agree with the sentiment that it does. We should, hopefully, enough of us will recognize that there is value in having this conversation, which is why I stated for our assistant city manager to share that let's look if we can get this to committee to have deeper conversations. The challenge is the way our current system is set up. It is at the hearing that we learn of a number of these projects. It is at the hearing that we as a full council get to see it and discuss it together. And it's at the hearing that we get the chance to ask the questions. So therefore, with that opportunity to ask the question, I get to ask staff certain questions for clarity, not only for myself, but also for community that's watching. I would hope that my colleagues, that a number of us will see value in extending this conversation, because what I would hope we would not want is in 20 years to know that something that we voted on, we are now seeing the negative impacts of it. And if it shows a direct contradiction to what we're trying to do to have a safe, healthy environment for our city, because we kind of like breathing fresh air, unlike other areas of the nation that have much more pollution. It's an opportunity for us to look at this living document that we are working with.
Thank you. I have Ms. Johnson, and then Ms. Ashmira and Ms. Watlington.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And thank you, Councilmember Mayfield, for bringing that up. It's like, if not now, when? And every time, not every time, I don't want to be extreme in my language, but you're absolutely right. We as council members are charged with making these decisions, with considering all of the priorities that we have. So I appreciate the conversation, and based on our strategic planning session, I don't know that we even need a majority of the council members to put that on the agenda. I think you're absolutely right. When we talk about cumulative impact and we ask these questions, then we're told, well, we're considering this one petition. So we do need to take some time and maybe get some follow-up with the infrastructure discussion that we talked about and be able to talk about what you said. And I'm so glad that you didn't say unintended consequences, that you said negative impact. Because when we're not considering these foreseeable challenges, you know, it's not unintended, it's just not addressed. So I really appreciate it. I would support taking that moving that to the committee or doing whatever it is that we need to do. We do need to put all of these priorities together. We know about the environmental challenges, the traffic impact, and if the hearings that is not the time to address it, we have to make time to address it. So I support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ajmira?
Thank you. So when Councilmember Mayfield brought up CAP, I knew I had to listen closely because that's something I had championed. I look at this rezoning as more of where we can consider air because that is part of our land use. And in the past, we have made decisions where industrial was a better use than housing, where we have also denied rezonings where housing wasn't the right use, where industrial wasn't the right use because it was too close to neighborhood or it was too close to, factories or high I2 industrial sites. So I personally think this is the right time to bring this up because this is not a policy conversation. This is about land use, about making sure is this the right site for this kind of development. I don't have an opinion at this point because I do have to study this a little bit further. In terms of I'm trying to figure out. I'm sorry. When you were going over where the industrial site is near this development, I was trying to follow what you were saying with some of the attachments that are here to our rezoning petition. So if you can tell me, if you can go back. So this is the rezoning petition. Mm-hmm. Where is the nearest industrial site or sites that would probably be a concern from the air environmental perspective?
The nearest industrial areas are realistically on the other side of the highway to the south of the site entirely. And in terms of it, it might help also to consider here, you can tell also with the place type recommendations as well in terms of what our long-range planning team, what they looked at when they considered the policy map where manufacturing logistics was going. And when I talked about the airport noise disclosure overlay, a lot of the manufacturing logistics stays on the ground, even in the policy map with that future land use and what it's considering. And they only mapped out manufacturing logistics nearest to the site to continue to stay south of the site and the other side of the highway. So we don't have a zoomed out visual here, so I apologize for that. I can send you more mapping later if you prefer, but we don't have anything directly adjacent to the site that is industrial in nature, and in terms of what the policy map recommends, there's nothing that would be industrial envisioned for this property itself.
Yeah, I think that addresses my concern, but certainly if you can do more, more zoom out map,
Yeah,
I think that would be helpful. That's all I have. If I have additional questions, I'll reach out to you and Mr. Carmichael.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have one additional comment, Ms. Watlington.
Yep, I just wanted to lend my voice to, I'm absolutely open to having this policy conversation. And I would also just remind us that if there's a policy and it's straightforward, that doesn't separate us from our obligation to vote and assess each one of these petitions. So I want us to be careful not to say that, well, if there's not a policy, then we cannot make a different decision. Yes, we are bound by certain legalities with it, but I just want language on something, we still have to consider that at the end of the day, the vote is what approves these items, not whatever's written in our policy. Of course, it has to be consistent with But in the absence of a policy, we still have to decide as this council.
Thank you, Ms. Watlington. I will say that this resides in Ms. Brown's district, and I had an opportunity to communicate with her today, and she wanted me to just make the statement that she's been working with Mr. Carmichael on a variety of different topics on this petition, and that has gone well, and you all will continue to work together. And so I just wanted to say that, make that statement for her. We had a motion to close public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you. We will move on to agenda item number 23, petition number 2024-131 by Pult Homes. The location is approximately 35.26 acres located on the northwest and southeast side of Moore's Chapel Road, south of Charlie Hip Road, and north of I-85 in the ETJ, closest to the Board of County Commission District 2, Ms. Leake's district, as well as City Council District 3, Ms. Brown's district. The current zoning is N1A and ML2. The proposed zoning is N1ECD. Staff recommends the approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to transportation, environment, site, and building design. And after staff's presentation, Ms. Grant, as well as Ms. Janaris Washington will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. 2024-131, it's just over 35 acres. On the northwest and southeast side of Moore's Chapel Road, south of Charlie Hip, and north of I-85. It is currently zoned N1E, and the proposed zoning is for N1E conditional. The policy map also recommends a neighborhood place type, meaning this petition would be consistent with that recommendation. The proposal for this petition is for a community of up to 78 triplex dwelling units and 79 single-family detached dwelling units. There'd be buffers established around the perimeter of the site, a 30-foot reverse frontage buffer along the Moore's Chapel Road frontage, meaning that you'd have 30 feet off the road where it would be screened and buffered before the houses would be placed along that frontage. Also identifies open space to include a pocket park and a dog park, commits to contributing $40,000 in Mecklenburg County Park and Rec to accommodate future parks within the general area of the site. Does commit to some design standards for the residential units, as well as some transportation improvements, which would include an extension of Performance Road through a portion of the site. And you can see that going through this general area up to the kind of northeast portion of the site. That would provide potentially for a future extension of that road. Public street network would access all the dwellings on the northwest side of Moore's Chapel Road, and then alley access would be provided for those triplex units on the south side of Moore's Chapel. There would be a left turn lane constructed on Moore's Chapel to get into the site, as well as an 8-foot planting strip and 12-foot multi-use path, and then an 8-foot planting strip and 6-foot sidewalk would be provided along Performance Road. Staff does recommend approval of the petition. We do have some outstanding issues related to transportation, environment, site and building design to work through. As mentioned, it is consistent with the policy map recommendation for Neighborhood 1. We'll be happy to take any questions following presentation by the petitioner and members of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Grant?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, members of the zoning committee. Bridget Grant, land use consultant with Moore & Van Allen. It's a pleasure to be here tonight on behalf of the Pulte team. We're pleased to be here tonight with staff support, and we'll work through all those outstanding issues. Dave did a good job giving the overview, so I'm just going to hit on a few highlights. I'm here with Mrs. Washington tonight. She's one of the neighbors that's the property owner behind us, and since our last submittal, we've made some additional changes to our plan that we want to memorialize here tonight, and also continue to work with the Washingtons prior to our plan submittal. So in addition to what Dave described, we're going to increase our building separation an additional 20 feet along our rear property line for a total of an 80-foot building separation between our closest home and where the Washington's existing home is. We've also committed to adding a 6-foot privacy fence along that property line and some additional supplemental landscape planning that's beyond the buffer requirements of the 10 feet within that increased buffer site. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mrs. Washington and give her the opportunity to speak.
Okay, Ms. Washington, please state your name, and you have 2 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Janaris Washington, and I'm here along with my husband, Terrence Washington, and we obviously live behind the property, and we are for the rezoning contingent upon the additional buffer that will benefit both parties as well as add additional green space. So we do look forward to the additional conversations with Pulte Homes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comment?
Move to close.
Second.
There's a motion to close and a second. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you for coming out, Mr. and Mrs. Washington. We'll move on to agenda item number 24, petition number 2024-133 by Kenjo Outdoor Advertising. The location is approximately 1.16 acres located east of Rossell's Ferry Road, north of Honeywood Avenue, and west of Brookshire Boulevard in District 2, Mr. Gramp's district. The current zoning is I1CD. Proposed zoning is ML1CD. Staff recommends approval of this petition, and after staff's presentation, Ms. Grant will again have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. The site is just over an acre located along I-85, Roslyn's Ferry Road, in an area developed with long-standing industrial uses, limited commercial uses, and residential neighborhoods. Parcel is currently zoned currently zoned light industrial conditional, I1CD. Petitioner is requesting to go to MNL1 conditional, manufacturing logistics 1 conditional. That is the UDO's version of a light industrial zoning district, though it's not a one-to-one equivalent of the I1 district of the legacy ordinance. It's pretty close. This request is inconsistent with the policy map's recommendation for the innovation mixed-use place type. The proposal includes development standards allowing for all uses in the MNL1 district with the following exceptions. Should be listed. Sorry. There's some prohibited uses listed with this conditional plan to limit some of the uses allowed typically within the MNL1 district, including adult electronic gaming establishments, adult uses, amusement facility, outdoor employment, labor service agency, kennel, vehicle auction facility, recycling collection center, truck stop, vehicle operations facility, and temporary uses, mobile car wash. Staff recommends approval of this petition. The existing uses in the zoning of this district are already industrial in nature and would not change as a result of this rezoning. If anything, this rezoning provides further restrictions on the site and further limits what manufacturing logistics uses may occur on the property. This request is compatible with the existing zoning surrounding the property and provides an appropriate transition between the adjacent MNL2 and general commercial properties. I'll take questions following petitioner's comments.
Thank you. Ms. Grant?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, members of the zoning committee. Bridget Grant, land use consultant with Moore & Van Allen. Pleased to be here on behalf of Kenjo. As Holly mentioned, this is inconsistent with the adopted land use policy. However, it is consistent with the context of the surrounding uses. I did want to go ahead and point out that even the orange area that's identified as N2 is actually a hotel, mortuary, and outdoor storage. And so it really is surrounded by non-residential uses. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I was going to go back. This is our list of prohibited uses since Holly didn't have the slide. Under the prohibited uses, again, it's adult electronic gaming establishments, adult uses, amusement facility, outdoor employment, labor service agency, kennel. All of those things are prohibited. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any comment? Mr. Graham?
Are there any other billboards over there in the close proximity?
Any other, I'm sorry?
Billboards.
I would have to look into it and get back to you on that.
Yeah, I'm going to take a look at the site just to be sure for myself, but I know all the other usage are pretty much industrial in nature. But just curious whether or not this will be a singular one. Are there others over there as well?
I can look it along the corridor and see if there are other ones in the area.
Okay,
Happy to provide that tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Move to close.
Second.
All right. Motion to close at public hearing in second. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Grant. We will move on to agenda item number 25, petition number 2024-134 by St. Charles Avenue LLC. The location is 0.7 acres located along the east side of Castleton Road, north of North Sharon Amity Road and west of Craig Avenue and District 5, Ms. Molina's district. The current zoning is in 1A. Proposed zoning is in 1C. Staff recommends this particular petition, and after staff's presentation, Mr. David Murray will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. 2024-134, just under a half acre. It is located on Castleton Road, just north of Sharon Amity, west of Craig Avenue. You can see the current zoning is N1A. Proposed zoning is N1C. We do have some N1C just 2 lots over from this petition, and you can also see coming up on our agenda in 2 items after this is 2024-136, just on Craig Avenue. So we've seen this transition start to take shape in this neighborhood. In the past, we were processing those with the UR2 conditional, which you can see on both sides of the parcel on Castleton as well in orange there. So we have seen some, again, some transition to some smaller lots, including a UR1 up on Craig and Falcon. And then you've got some a mix of lot sizes and lot pattern in this area. Again, an N1C is something that we've seen on the street just on a couple of adjacent lots. So it is consistent with the recommendation for the policy map for Neighborhood 1. Again, it's something the staff is recommending approval for. We'll be happy to take any questions following Mr. Murray's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murray?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and Zoning Committee. I'm David Murray. This rezoning, the purpose of it, like the other N1Cs on this street, is to allow this lot to be subdivided into 2 parcels. And so that's why we're seeking the move from an N1A to an N1C. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Molina?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you both for your explanation. I think since this, for, I guess, the record, I want to make sure that I'm clear. We're going to talk about this 2 petitions from now as well, because we have 2 that are actually on the same street. So your company is buying both?
It's my client. I'm an
Your
attorney
client's
here.
company is buying both of them?
No, these are separate. In fact, all these rezonings have been from different petitioners on this street. Yeah, so they're not connected with each other.
Okay. I do have a few concerns, and again, I see that there wasn't a great deal of participation at the meeting.
Yeah, and when we did I actually rezoned one of the UR2s that's across the street on Castleton also. And I also went back and looked at some of the other N1Cs. I can tell you on that street in particular, there is some interest for other homeowners that have been interested in N1C also for this use, but we only had one person attend the community meeting in the prior rezoning that we did a couple of years ago. And then on this particular petition, there really wasn't anybody specifically there. On the one that we're going to talk about in a little bit, the neighbor did come.
And I guess my primary concern with regards to zoning petitions is generally that, right? It's our community members really don't understand this process. And by the time, very, very often, what I've seen since I've been in this position is that by the time our community members understand what's going on, the process has progressed far beyond where their implementation will make a difference, right? And that's where, for us, and because we get that sentiment right away, that's where the challenge lies, right? So we've actually been constrained by the state to say that we can't downgrade, right, any type of density that is currently in place. But to say that we're then going to upgrade on a case-by-case basis density, then, we can do that from a decision-making perspective. And I'm a big proponent, and I'm not going to stop saying this. I bust my bottom for the little teeny-weeny house that I own on the east side. Do you understand? It is one of the greatest assets that I own. I'm not a rich woman. And what happens to it, where I spend my money, and how I invest in it is one of the greatest returns on investment that I'm going to get, right? And I imagine that most humans who are purchasing a property feel that way. And what my neighbor does matters, and what my neighbor doesn't do matters. And how they choose to upgrade, downgrade, all of those things matter. And I realize that there's a level of autonomy. We can't tell our neighbors what to do, right? But if there's some general interest in, what takes place in a neighborhood, because my investment is directly affected, then I'd at least like to know what's going on, right? To have some autonomy on my behalf to say whether I want to be your next door neighbor, or whether I want to live in your neighborhood, or whether there are other opportunities for me to find, a place with humans that would like to live the way that I would like to live. And so I think the worst thing that we can do is not be responsible enough to let the people that we represent know what we intend to do, and give the ones that aren't in agreement the autonomy to decide whether they want to do something differently. And so I instead of having a full scope conversation, online, I want to make sure that you understand, until I understand what the neighbor sentiment is, because I don't know that right now.
Sure, absolutely.
Right now, only saying based on what my personal preference is. I am a great believer in people being able to, especially with home ownership, make decisions that are good for them. Some people want density. Some people want to split their lots, and that is absolutely okay. But if there are also people who don't want that, and I think we can't villainize either one, right? And we also have to give an opportunity for both with regards to what their sentiment is to make their autonomous decisions where necessary, right? So, like I said, I'm interested in community feedback to find out what the general sentiment is in that neighborhood. If I can get some, that would help me greatly to know how to recommend to my colleagues what this decision should look like. Because again, this is, we're a large landscape. I know that we're making a lot of different decisions, and it would help me greatly to know what the general sentiment of the community was around this.
On this one in particular, the individual that did attend owns the lots that are at the corner of Sharon Amity, and most of our conversation was about them potentially rezoning their property too. So that was kind of a unique kind of twist on this, because there's so much, if you drive on Castleton right now, there's a lot of new houses being built on Castleton. So that was kind of brought out that interest. But since we had the other one, since I was representing the other one, we had 2 community meetings. So the neighbors got 2 notices from me, and we still only had, I think, 2 or 3 people total respond.
And
So
Ms.
there
Murray, I
just
don't
wasn't a
want
lot.
you to feel as though I'm saying yes or no.
Oh, sure.
Right?
No, I
want you
totally
to
understand.
understand that this is just a general interest
Oh,
in
of course.
understanding what the general sentiment is.
Right.
It might be that neighborhood wants this, and they like it, and they're okay with it, and I'm happy to support them if that's, if that's what they do.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Right? But I need to hear from them in order to know that. So like I said, I'd love to circle with you online,
Yeah, absolutely.
offline, you and I discuss, how I can be a part of, getting a pulse of what's going on with those neighbors. It would help.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Molina. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. So how large is the lot currently?
What was the size? It's just under half an acre. Right, so it would be
4.7 according to the.
.7,
staff
so it would be .35 each. Very similar to the N1C. There's actually another N1C that's on this street that's not showing up, that's directly next to the N1C that's showing up.
I'm sorry, so it's currently
.7.
Oh, I thought.
No,
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry, let's be clear. The size of this particular lot is .47.
.47. And then if the rezoning was approved, you would divide that in half. We're looking at putting a line through the middle of that lot, similar to the N1C that would be to the north there.
Yes, a little.
Okay, so about 23 and a half, something like that. Okay.
Minus ingress and egress and all of that stuff.
So I do have a question for staff, and I don't know who can answer it. In 2023, council proposed that staff look at the infill policy. and that was sent for committee. I know I asked about it in November, and I wanted to know the progress of that, and if we had a policy that we had taken a look at, would that affect this current petition? And I know you know the petition that I'm talking about, when we sent it to staff to take a look at our infill policy. Because what I'm looking at is this is an established neighborhood, and we're looking at splitting the lots. So I want to know if the policy that we sent for discussion would impact this petition.
I'm not sure I'm familiar with what was set forward. I don't know if there's some,
Could I answer that?
yeah.
Hold on, let's give staff an opportunity first, Mr. Driggs.
Yeah, I'm just not familiar with what that referral may have been, so I apologize.
That's why I thought maybe if I could.
I think it's the referral that came to TPD committee, so.
Right. I was going to say there was a referral, and there was a lot of discussion around infill, different sizes of lots affected by it. Essentially, we came back with a congestion overlay and some other provisions, and we essentially concluded that policy referral. I think we finished the work that we were going to do about that on infill development. Doesn't mean there aren't any unanswered questions, but that particular referral led to, we have the congestion overlay, we have the cottage overlay. We went through the process where people were using the higher density development inappropriately, and we shut that door. And then we created an opportunity under the congestion overlay for higher density development in areas like this. And pardon me if I made a hash of that, but that's my recollection of our process in the committee.
I think the outcome of that referral was the compact and the conservation.
Compact, yes, that was the
Yes,
other one.
yes. And so that was the product of that referral, was to create some additional standards for those types of by right developments, to have fewer private streets, greater open space, and there's also a restriction in the number of allowed triplexes and subdivisions.
And it was the congestion overlay that we tightened up.
We
Right.
talked about, I don't know.
There was one provision that was being used by 90% of petitioners.
Right, that was the conservation.
That was conservation.
Yes,
So we
conservation.
toughened that one up, right? And then we came up with compact. I've got my nomenclature wrong, but anyway, the fact is, as far as I'm concerned, the committee's work on that particular referral is done.
And we can talk offline, because I know the full council did have a concern with, so I just want to make sure that that was addressed. Okay, I just wanted to know if there was any pending discussion on, like you said, downsizing or upsizing the density, or allowing lots to be split, because we can always tell when there's a trend, right? So I think this is a new trend that we're going to be seeing from the developers. So, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, and I'd like to say I do agree with Ms. Molina here. This is a relatively small lot that is having a request to be split. And in this case, for the neighborhood of Castleton Gardens, I do see that there have been 5 past petitions that have been approved that have allowed for effectively additional density on similar size lots. However, in our packet at least, this particular parcel is surrounded by single-family detached homes. And I didn't hear you mention that any of the neighbors came to either one of these meetings. And so I would just like to make sure that either through the Castleton Gardens Neighborhood Association or some other measure, perhaps Ms. Molina can stand up, that at least the neighbors completely abut to this parcel understand the request that's being asked.
Yes, the one neighbor at the intersection of Sharon Amity did come, but you're right, the immediate neighbors, we did not hear anything from them, and they didn't, when we had the prior rezonings on the UR2, they didn't participate either. That was several years ago, so they might be different. But yeah, I'm happy to have more communications.
That'd be great.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Molina, you have an additional?
One additional comment, Mayor Pro Tem, and I'll be brief. I know that there's a note about transportation on this, because it looks kind of narrow as well. you guys would have to do some type of upgrade in order to substantiate this change? Can you explain that, Mr. Pettin? I see some transportation notes on here, or maybe someone from DOT, or maybe it's the next one, I don't remember. I'm going off memory because I was looking at it over the weekend.
It'll be subject to anything that's triggered by the UDO for a subdivision like this. So if there's sidewalk improvements or other improvements, they would still have to meet all of those. But it hadn't been determined if what would get triggered until they get into any kind of permitting based on what they do and what they propose to build.
So, and I want to make sure that I understand that from a general community perspective. So basically what you're saying is if this were approved, once they got into the permitting process, then you guys would enforce what the UDO says that they would have to do. So there would be no really general opportunity for me to work with the developer to say, this is too narrow, can we do something like widen the street, et cetera, until afterwards, or?
Yeah, that would come in the permitting process. A project like this, of this small scale, wouldn't trigger probably any real road improvements. They may trigger frontage improvements, like I said, improving the sidewalk, putting a planting strip in, making sure the driveways are, up to whatever CDOT standards are to access the road. But I wouldn't anticipate any significant improvements to the road itself, just based on what they can do with the size of the lots and the types of units they would build. But there would likely be some frontage improvements for the sidewalk infrastructure.
Okay, and that, again, those types of questions, Mr. Murray, are things that I anticipate based on just sitting in the seat long enough to know what community members are going to ask me, right? Sure. To say, this is what we're saying out loud, this is what we're asking, just so that a lot of these generalized conversations that we're going to have, some of this stuff has been asked to you to kind of get those things going. But again, I want to reiterate to you that this is not yes or no. This is giving the humans that I represent the autonomy to know what's going on, participate, say yes or no, et cetera, because that generally, I've never learned to take no participation as not interested. And, because from a civics perspective, people see the Z all the time. They don't know what that means. The number of humans that actually watch our meetings that aren't really engaged in this level because of said thing or another, they don't know until then there's a buzz in the community. And then it's like, hey, do you realize that they're doing da-da-da-da-da? And then boom, I get blown up. And it's like, how do you let this happen? And we've been working on it for 6 months. And then it's one of those things where, we're kind of trying to put it all together and we can't stop the process. So I'm just trying to be proactive is what I'm attempting to try to do. So. That's all I have, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Hearing no...
Close.
Second. All right. All in favor to close public hearing, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Murray.
Thank you.
We will move on to agenda item number 26, petition number 2024-135 by Harold Carrillo. The location is approximately .92 acres located on the east side of Grove Street, north of Trexler Ave, and northwest of Nevin Road in District 2, Mr. Graham's district. The current zoning is N1A, proposed zoning is N1C. Staff recommends approval of this petition, and after there's no one actually signed up to speak in favor or in opposition of this petition, so we will have staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. 2024-135, it's just under an acre. It's .92 acres, located on the east side of Grove Street, north of Trexler Avenue, and northwest of Nevin Road. The property is currently zoned N1A. You can see it's two separate properties there. The proposed zoning, similar to our last petition and our upcoming petition, is going to that N1C district. I'll stay on this slide just for a moment, just to kind of give you some context of this one. I know we were just talking about splitting lots and the size and width. This petition, should it be approved and the owner elect to subdivide these parcels, would essentially result in similar parcels that you can see just to the south of it, or if you're looking at it kind of to your right, those long, skinny, narrow parcels that are already existing on Grove Street on this side, and then also on that kind of northwest side would be the result, should this rezoning get approved and they elect to subdivide, you'd essentially have the same kind of lot pattern that we can see in this area, and then also on that other side of Lake Road, where they're longer and skinnier lots. So again, kind of an area where there's not a distinctive lotting pattern, but looking at this one, we didn't have any significant concerns, given that we'll see a similar outcome to what's just next door on those 3 parcels. So that's kind of what our thought was when we looked at this one and made our recommendation. It is consistent with the policy map, similar to the last one and similar to the upcoming one for that neighborhood 1 place type. Again, it's just taking that from A to C. We do recommend approval, and we'll be happy to take any questions. I know we don't have a speaker for the petitioner's team, but we'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Graham?
Thank you for the presentation. Certainly, the petitioner was aware that there was a meeting tonight.
Yes.
Okay. And secondly, are you aware whether or not there was a community meeting?
There
It
was.
seemed to be pretty simplistic, but
Yeah, there was a community meeting. I was just taking a look at that where we were discussing the last one. I did not see any attendees. I don't know if that's a result of some of the lots that are in the area. I know there's some next door that are vacant, but there were no attendees for the community meeting. They did hold it. They held it virtually, advertised it, sent us the notice as well, but I did not have any attendees on record.
thank you. Move to close public hearing.
Second.
Okay, all in favor to close public hearing, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. We will move on to agenda item number 27, petition number 2024-136 by Keene Building Company. The location is approximately .51 acres, located on the west side of Craig Avenue, east of Castleton Road, and north of North Sharon Amity Road in District 5, Ms. Molina's district. The current zoning is in 1A. Proposed zoning is in 1C. Staff recommends this petition, and after staff's presentation, Mr. Murray will again have 3 minutes. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. 2024-136 is .51 acres, so just a little bit larger than the lot we looked at on the other side on Castleton. Similar request, similar context, N1A, back to the N1C district. I know we've talked about this, prior to, but just the reminders of the UR2s, UR1s, N1Cs that we've seen in this neighborhood to date. Again, just something that we saw that kind of pattern continuing through this petition as well. It is consistent with the policy map for Neighborhood 1. And I hear all the conversation we've had around these, and we certainly are receptive to what we've heard from council on these petitions, also what we heard last month on some others. We are continuing just interdepartmentally on our side, just so you guys can kind of understand where we are with these requests as well. As we're finishing up and working through some area planning, obviously, the community area plans will be coming out to you guys soon. As part of that, we are looking to see if there are some things we can consider to look at when we're talking about going from within one N1 district to another. That's something I think we'd like to try to, get a little bit more solid footing to understand what those potential impacts would be, what kind of context we look at for those. So I would just say, we hear what the conversation has been. We are taking that under consideration as well, and we hope to have some additional dialogue to share with you all over the coming months about, how we can continue to evaluate these, their appropriateness and how, even if they are consistent with the plan, what that means for, development patterns and lot patterns in existing neighborhoods. So with that, I will get to our recommendation, which is similar to the other ones we just discussed. Again, it's recommended for approval. It is consistent with the map, but I did want to just throw that context out because I know we've had several of these over the last 2 hearing nights between January and February, and we will likely continue to see some of those types of requests, and we do hope to have a little bit more information and clarity to provide as we continue to get them and process them to put in front of you guys when you're making decisions on them. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Murray, and we'll take any questions following his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.
Thank you again, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Zoning Committee. David Murray here for the petitioner. This is Keene Building Company. They are builders in Charlotte. They're seeking to obtain this rezoning to divide the lot. In this community meeting, we did have the adjacent property owner that did attend, as well as the property owner directly across the street. and most of our questions were general questions about the rezoning process and what we're going to do. The house that's on this property is fallen into disrepair, and so it will be torn down regardless, rebuilt. But the petitioner is seeking to subdivide, as we've discussed.
Thank you. Ms. Molina?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. And I won't go through the whole thing. Again, this is, you know, a statement for public consumption. And David, I appreciate your comments because I do think as we continue to see these, I think as a body, we're going to have some additional conversations leaning on your expertise, right? We have new constraints that we're dealing with and new realities that are beyond our control. But in the interim, you know, I think as we make these decisions, we have to be very responsible with the trust that's being, you know, expected of us. So again, thank you for that because I think we're going to have to talk about that more offline as well. But I look forward to hearing from you, Mr. Murray.
Absolutely.
You know, because again, I'm going to relay that to my colleagues to you know, let them know what we've come up with. And that's all I have, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. Same question as the last time. What's the current lot size?
The lot size is 0.51 acres,
Yes.
so just like 0.4 of an acre larger than the last one. And I think it is, I'm not sure how wide it is, it may be about 120 feet in width.
Okay. That's all. Move to close.
Second. All right, all in favor of closing, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Murray. We will move on to agenda item number 28, petition number 2024-140 by Urban Trends Real Estate. The location is approximately 0.45 acres located on the northeast of West Trade Street, southeast of Fraser Avenue, and southwest of West 5th Street and District 2, Mr. Graham's district. The current zoning is NC, proposed zoning is TOD NC. Staff recommends this petition, and after staff's presentation, Mr. Matt Langston will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. This site is just under half an acre, located along West Trade Street, just outside of Uptown, as you can see here. Currently zoned neighborhood center, proposing to go to transit-oriented development neighborhood center. That is consistent with the policy map's recommendation for the neighborhood center place type. This is a conventional petition, so there is no associated site plan. Staff does recommend approval of this petition. This does meet the applicability requirements for the TOD NC zoning district. It is located within a 500-foot walk of the Wesley Heights Gold Line Station. The TOD NC district may be applied to sites within a 1-mile walking distance of an existing transit station. The TOD NC district is appropriate at this site given its proximity to the Gold Line Station and general location where we have already identified the neighborhood center place type being appropriate. And I'll take any questions following petitioner's comments.
Thank you. Mr. Langston.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Matt Langston with Landworks Design Group. I've got Chris Ogunrendi here with Urban Trends Real Estate. So, real quickly, Urban Trends has been around since 2010. Focuses urban infill and workforce housing and usually multifamily attached. This project, we're proposing, like Holly said, we're a stone's throw from the Gold Line station, and we think that the TOD NC is an appropriate zone for here. What we're proposing is a mixed-use building that would have ground floor retail. Upper floors would be a combination of workforce and market rate housing. And we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Would you like to make any comments? You have 2 minutes left if you do.
You have any questions for me?
Excellent. Any questions?
I'm just surprised Chris is lost for words.
I offered him an opportunity.
Good neighborhood meeting?
The first one was very, very good. Jatonya Adams and some of the leaders were were present at the first meeting. The second one was just only one person. I guess folks were very supportive and didn't have any opposition to the project.
Please just state your full name for the record.
Oh, my name is Christian Ogunrinde. I'm in Third Ward resident and long-term Charlotte resident.
As if we didn't know.
All right, close public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. Chris, what I wanted to say, I was just saying to Mr. Graham that that particular area needs to be touched, right? I think it would help the community quite a bit with the growth that's going on over there along that particular corridor. So look forward to seeing what's to come with this.
Thank you very much.
We have a motion to close public hearing and second. All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous, and that brings us to our final petition for the evening. Agenda item number 29.
The train.
Petition number 2024-148 by CSE Communities LLC. The location is approximately 2.60 acres located along the east side of Cowluke Drive, south of Mount Holly, Huntersville Road, and west of Brookshire Boulevard in District 2, Mr. Grant's district. He's very busy this evening.
He is busy.
Current zoning is CC, proposed zoning is CAC 1CD. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon outstanding issues related to site and building design. And after staff's presentation, Ms. Grant and welcome Mr. Cinema, you will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. This site is just over 2.5 acres south of Mount Holly, Huntersville Road on the east side of Cowluke Drive in an area with extensive commercial and multifamily development. Site is currently zoned commercial center conditional. They're proposing to go to community activity center 1 conditional. This request is consistent with the policy map's recommendation for the community activity center place type at this site. The proposal itself doesn't have a site plan, but it does have detailed development standards with the following conditions, which are 80 multifamily stacked units, with 70% of the units being limited to households earning no more than 80% of the area median income for a period of no less than 20 years. This project would be utilizing Housing Trust Fund financing. The petitioner commits to an 18-month period, including 2-year request for proposal to obtain the Housing Trust Fund financing. If after that 18-month period, the Housing Trust Fund financing is not obtained, the site would be permitted to develop under the CAC 1 standards as outlined in the conditional rezoning plan without the affordable housing commitment. 18-month period begins upon the approval of the rezoning petition. Staff recommends approval of this petition upon resolution of outstanding issues related to site and building design. The petition is appropriate and compatible with the surrounding uses in the CAC place type designation, as it replaces an underutilized portion of a large parcel with 80 dwelling units. Property abuts the Mountain Island Marketplace Shopping Center, which boasts a wide variety of daily goods and services that would directly support future residents at this site. Property is located along 2 bus routes and is a short walk from an express bus stop, providing commuter access into Uptown. Such transit options further support increased residential density at this site. And I'll take questions following petitioner comments.
Thank you. Ms. Grant?
Good evening again, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, members of the zoning committee. It's a pleasure to be here tonight with Crosland Southeast, with Tim Sidema and Peter Stipasevic. I think many of you are familiar with Crosland Southeast's effort in the affordable housing arena. And so this development is going to be similar to what some of you have recently had the opportunity to see at Eastland. As Holly mentioned, it's an affordable housing opportunity. We put the limitation on it so that in the event they are unable to secure Housing Trust Fund dollars within the first, by 2 cycles, 18 months, it gives it the opportunity to revert back to all uses permitted in the CAC district, which is consistent with the adopted land use policy. I hate to repeat anything that Holly has already said regarding consistency and benefits, and so with that, Tim and I are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Graham? And then Ms. Watlington.
Thank you. Could you talk a little bit about infrastructure impact over there? Maybe an email or 2 in reference to residents' concerns in reference to that, and also just an overview of the attendance and
Property owner. And we typically offer, if you have any questions and can't attend, please follow up. We'll send out PowerPoint presentations. So if there are residents that have reached out to you, we welcome the opportunity to have additional conversation. The adjacent property owner, most of our discussion with them was positive regarding investment in the area, managing access to and from the site. Tim, if there's anything.
I'm Tim Sidema with Crosland Southeast. Nice to see all of you again. Thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. The property that we're under contract is owned by CQ, State Employees Credit Union, and we're thrilled to be working on this property for this opportunity. We are not aware, as Bridget said, of any infrastructure concerns from any neighbors. None have been expressed to us. If there are neighbors that have concerns, we'd love to talk to them.
any improvements as a result of the rezoning that will be made as a part of it? Just curious.
We don't have a site-specific plan at this point, so when it goes in for permitting, if CDOT has the opportunity to review and identify any traffic improvements, it'll happen during the land development permitting process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Watlington.
Yes, you noted the idea that if the Housing Trust Fund dollars were not approved within 2 cycles or 18 months, that it would revert back to essentially, I guess, market rate or unrestricted housing. Can you speak to where that policy or where that is derived from?
So it's something we've used on a few developments because several years ago when people were coming in and requesting petitions for affordable housing, when the petitions didn't receive Housing Trust Fund dollars after a few cycles, then we figured out that they weren't going to get the dollars of the funds. The property had to be rezoned again to relieve them of the affordable housing requirement. This is a tool that we developed with staff, and I think Dave might be able to answer, or Holly, to basically create an opportunity that if the Housing Trust Fund dollars weren't available, it wouldn't require rezoning, but would still align with the adopted land use policy or other zonings that they could support.
So, Dave, if you could speak to that, I'd like to understand exactly what policy that is, where it sits, and. The reason I ask is because I'm keen on making sure that we're not making Housing Trust Fund decisions via a rezoning.
Right. Yeah, no, we're essentially what, as Bridget kind of outlined, if they go through those cycles a few times, it's not a guarantee that they would get that funding. And so we've seen quite a few over the years that they kind of hit the brakes at that point where if they don't get funding, they can't convert it to another type of project, whether it be market rate apartments or other uses even allowed in that zoning district that they rezone to, because they're just locked into the HTF funding process. So if they don't get that, it kind of absolves them then of continuing that pursuit after, 2 tries. And then they could convert the project either to a market rate apartment project or any of those uses allowed in the activity center district, which then would be consistent with our land use policy. So it's something that we've, like we said, have done on others, because it would just have to go back through the process then of coming in and saying, well, we just essentially want to take that note away that said we're going to go after HTF funding, but we can't get that funding now. So it's just a mechanism that saves everybody that time and effort to go back through the process again of rezoning.
And where is this policy?
So it's not a related policy, it's just part of the zoning documents that are put together for the conditions. So it's not, it doesn't affect, their ability to go after HTF funds. Even if they want to pursue it again after 2 years or 2 cycles, they could continue on as long as they want to. It's just after those 2 tries, if they don't get successful funding, they have the option to then convert that to a market rate project. So.
Okay, I'd like to understand a little bit more about that, because I want to make sure that I'm clear about where the legal authority sits for that and how that is impacted by council's decisions. So we can get off.
Yeah, I mean, we're not legally binding them to even go after the HTF funding. They can sit on this and never pursue it on their own. But if they don't get through that funding cycle, it didn't make sense for those to then be tied to a funding mechanism that they can't get. And then the project just becomes kind of dead, and you're sitting with a vacant piece of property that has no other entitlement rights.
Yeah, I'm concerned. I don't want to say concerned, that's maybe too strong of a word, but I'm interested because if we are making our decisions based on what we believe is going to go on that land, and then that doesn't happen for whatever reason, we don't deem it to be a project that's prioritized in those particular cycles, and then there is a rezoning or what would have
We'll get back to you. Yeah,
Thank
if
you.
yeah, I think I understand your question, and we can get some more information for you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
certainly.
you.
Thank you, Ms. Hagler-Gray. I have a list here, so I have Ms. Mayfield, Ms. Ajamira, and Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. So I have a question for the petitioner, and full disclosure, this is the side of town that I live on, so I drive this road rather frequently, but as Councilmember Graham mentioned, we did receive, I would say, 2 emails that have concern regarding the traffic. So if we can go back, if the team up top or whoever's in charge of the clicker can go back to the map that was just up, that one. No, the other one. Go back again. Where you showed off of the highway and showed the actual site. So keep going back. Okay. So I'm just trying to figure, because full disclosure, I'm geographically challenged. So if am I coming up Mount Holly's Huntersville Road from, say, the Harris Teeter Shopping Center, and this is Brookshire that will be on my left, or am I heading away where Brookshire I will be making a right? Because I'm trying to get an idea of how recent is this map? Because there's this turnoff that's on Mount Holly Huntersville Road that is this Mario go-kart state-created turn that is extremely confusing. And depending on which way you're coming, trying to get out onto the street, that backs up a lot because it's really just one lane. And then you have to turn to get on the 16, which is kind of interesting because then you have to immediately jump over to try to get on. It's some interesting things going on at Brookshire. So I'm trying to figure out if we say there's no traffic conversations that's happening around here, this is a one-lane road. Mount Holly, Huntersville, there's a one-lane road. There's already a lot of congestion from development and things that are happening in the area. So I'm trying to understand the potential impact, whether this is workforce housing or not. The potential impact when the concerns that from one of the residents that reach out, the roads and crossing sections in the areas are not pedestrian friendly, which presents a significant safety concern for all residents, increasing number of pedestrians and visitors, the lack of sidewalks and safe crosswalks can make it even more difficult for pedestrians to navigate the area as the population increases. That is a very heavy vehicle area. So help me understand. Or recommendation regarding infrastructure.
So they'll have the infrastructure conversation in the permitting side from a transportation standpoint. So that's, on this particular petition, they've elected to do that and look at that when it comes in through permitting, because they can assess what the actual use is going to be, if they actually get that funding for, the multifamily, or they build market rate multifamily or something else down the road. They'll assess all the transportation impacts and potential improvements when they get into that land development.
So we're not going to talk about the transportation or assess the transportation until after it's potentially approved?
So they look at it during the rezoning process, and they determine if there's, anything significant that may trigger them to say, hey, we need to look at something a little bit further at this time versus permitting. When they're looking at it for this particular instance, they felt that the permitting side of it would capture it in the same sense that they would now. So it's just a matter of the timing of when they're going to look at that, knowing that they've got to get through the process by, I think, March or April to go into the HTF funding pool. That was another consideration that we made to look at transportation impacts when they get into permitting, because we wouldn't have, this petition just came in late in January for this funding opportunity, so we had to move it through the process to go into that HTF cycle pretty quickly.
Oh, so we fast forwarded this project?
We did get this project in at a pretty quick time frame because it was a late addition to getting to that HTF cycle. So.
Okay. Mr. Cinnamon, you build great product. That is not the question. What I would like to know is if there's possibly a opportunity to maybe have an additional meeting with community. If not, then maybe we can get together and have a follow-up, because I want to make sure that community members understood and understand this particular proposal, because I think some might not have received the information or understood the information when it was sent to them, because for whatever reason. So I would just like the opportunity, if we can, to maybe follow up, even if it's a small group, to just be able to have a conversation, if that's okay.
Thank you for the comment. As Dave mentioned, we are on a schedule. It's not just HTF, it's for the LIHTC credits and all that kind of stuff. But as long as we can remain on that schedule, we'd be more than happy to have another neighborhood meeting and meet with folks. I might add two other comments, Ms. Mayfield. One is, this is a senior affordable development, and so as such, the traffic impact will be less than other projects of that size and scale. And secondly, in the state's low-income housing tax credit process, there's a very precise scoring methodology, which one of the factors does take into account area infrastructure and pedestrian sidewalks and so on. And on the state's scoring metrics, this site scores perfectly. So there may be, that doesn't mean there's no need for sidewalks or whatever, but it's better than average because it's perfect on the state scoring methodology here.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Ajmira.
Thank you. Team, thank you for your commitment to affordable housing. We appreciate the partnership with the city. I think having this as part of our condition, but after 2 years, if you're not successful with the housing trust fund dollars, that you could be able to develop this, you could develop the site based on this rezoning. I think it actually lessens the risk for affordable housing developer, and hopefully it will attract other affordable housing developers to come and partner with the city to build more affordable housing, because there is substantial risk. I get it, right? Because you are hoping that you'll get housing trust fund dollars, and rezoning, let's be honest, it takes 6 months to a year, and there is substantial investment that developer is making, petitioner is making. So I understand that. I'm glad that we have been able to work that out to help with affordable housing. But in terms of the timeline, does it take, I know you have done so many affordable housing developments with the city. What's the usual time frame that it takes from the time the rezoning is approved to the time housing trust dollars are announced?
So you've made several points, Ms. Ajmira. Thank you for that. From the timing standpoint, the state publishes a very precise schedule, and so there is a window that you can apply for tax credits in January. If you miss it by 1 day, you miss it by 1 year. And that's why Dave and his staff get frustrated sometimes when we come in. We literally had a deadline to submit the application to the state for the tax credits at noon on a Friday. We got the contract. We were working with the seller for 4 months on this deal. They signed it at 12:05. We missed the deadline by 5 minutes. We submitted the application without the property contract, and we knew it was imminent. We were hoping to get it, and we got it 5 minutes later. We sent it in, and they charged us. They accepted the application, but they charged us a penalty for being 5 minutes late. So, I mean, we might have missed it for a whole year, but they were gracious to us, for the 5 minutes. So we made that deadline, but we've got to have the rezoning done by a certain time in order to file the final application. And then the Housing Trust Fund, all the timing that council works on, all fits into the state's timeline. So it's very regimented. One thing I'll mention about the 2-year time, kind of sunset on the affordable deal. Our interest in this property is solely for affordable. You know, we have no plans to do anything other than affordable on this deal. We hope and pray that we get tax credits and housing trust fund and close the financing gaps and so on. It's hard enough to get a site under contract for any seller to sell to an affordable housing developer, because it takes a year longer to do an affordable housing project than any other project. So that's hard enough. But then if you say, okay, and we're going to rezone your property, and we may not get credits, but you may only be able to do affordable housing on your property, that's another deterrent where a seller says, I'm not working with you guys. And so we had a situation last year, Bridget helped us on a site off of Arrowwood and Microsoft Way, and we got it rezoned, but we didn't get the tax credits. We wasted all the money on all the pursuit and everything else. But that seller was pretty smart, and they demanded, saying, okay, I'll take a risk with you, but you got to make sure that you can't limit my zoning. And so on that deal, we put that sunset on it, and it turned out to be to their advantage because we didn't get the credits, and so we had to drop the contract, and so he was not constrained or stuck with a project that he couldn't develop. And we've got the same, the seller here said the same thing. Hey, we'll work with you. They're kind of missional. The State Employees Credit Union is kind of missional. That's why they're giving us the time to go through this. But they said, we don't want you to limit our zoning if you're not able to get credits or housing trust fund or whatever else. And so it just gives us another opportunity to win the argument to try to get the site under contract.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
I won't be long. Thank you, Tim, for that explanation. Can you show me the slides presentation? The slide said affordable housing, right?
Correct, yes.
Affordable housing. So I appreciate the explanation. We're kind of putting the cart before the horse, but you have to because of a timing issue. I do have a question about 80% AMI. If it's granted tax credit, there are certain levels, right? There are certain numbers, or there have to be some at 30 and different ranges, right? So you're not including that in this presentation?
Yeah, to get tax credits, and I might add to get housing trust fund, the city and the state mandate what the AMI ranges are. We always build a little wiggle room in the application here. I think we're asking for 80 units and at least 80%. Our plan is 72 units and 100% affordable. You build a little bit of a wiggle room just in case you need some for one issue or another. But we plan to have 100% of the units serving between 30% and 80% AMI, with the average being at or below 60% AMI for the whole entire project.
Okay, because it doesn't say that. So, okay.
Correct.
Okay.
But we have, that's not in the zoning limitations, but it is in the tax credit limitations. It is in the housing trust fund stipulations.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to give it to Mr. Graham here, but I just wanted to make a comment before you made a comment. Thank you, Mr. Sinema, for giving the example, because I know we had some conversations earlier around when this took place before. I agree with my colleagues. This is, it's a difficult task to build affordable housing, and yet it's one of the things that's the top priority of council and so needed in the city, right? Across the AMI bandwidth, right, from 30 to 80%. And so I just wanted to highlight that. I know it's very difficult as we work with developers throughout the city who want to do this work and contribute to the community, and yet it's just a very rigid, stringent, difficult process. So I just wanted to underscore that, and then I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Graham for a final comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I think you kind of read my mind. I was going to articulate basically the same thing, that we're really trying to thread a needle here based on scale and scope and timing in terms of what we're trying to do. Obviously, there's, in any rezoning, there are some outstanding issues to be resolved. I'm looking forward to working with you to bring it to a conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move to close.
Second.
Ms. Molina, you have a comment?
Really quickly, and it's a praise to Tim Sinema, just to say, thank you for being a great partner with the city of Charlotte. You've done some great work across the city and partnered with us in some Hail Mary missions too. And so thank you for your partnership, and I look forward to following up with Mr. Graham about this project.
Thank you. I had a motion to close public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise hands. Any opposed? That is it. All in favor to adjourn the meeting, please go home. Have a lovely evening.
All right.